The blue waters of Aquatica Prime had always been beautiful. Ambassador Cathara remembered swimming through the coral cities as a child, watching the bright fish dance between the glowing towers. The water was warm then, and full of life. Now, as she floated in the council chamber of her dying world, the water felt cold against her gills. 3 months had passed since the quarantine began. 3 months since the galaxy decided her people should die. We have received another message from the Galactic Council, her aide Veltar reported, his voice weak through the water. They will not lift the blockade. The hegemony insists we carry the plague. Cathara closed her large black eyes. The plague. It was a lie, and she knew it. Her scientists had run every test possible. There was no disease on their world. But the galaxy did not want to hear the truth. The trouble started 6 months ago when hegemony ships visited their system. They claimed to be doing research, studying the unique biology of Aquatica Prime. The Zephyrians welcomed them. They always welcomed visitors. Their people believed in sharing knowledge and friendship with all beings. But something went wrong with the hegemony experiments. Strange chemicals were dumped into the outer ocean. Dead fish began washing up on distant shores. When Zephyrian scientists investigated, they found traces of biological weapons in the water. That was when everything changed. Chancellor Vextar of the hegemony stood before the Galactic Council and declared that Aquatica Prime was infected with a deadly plague. He showed images of the dead fish and spoke of dangerous diseases that could spread to other worlds. The evidence looked real to those who did not know the truth. These creatures have created a biological weapon that threatens all life in the galaxy, Vextar had said, his mechanical voice echoing through the council chamber. We must act quickly to contain this threat. The other species listened to his words. The crystal beings called the Vorthari spoke of protecting their cities of light. The insect-like klaxons buzzed about the danger to their hives. The energy creatures known as the Luminari feared the plague might damage their pure forms. None of them asked to hear the Zephyrian side of the story. Cathara had tried to speak. She presented her own evidence, showing that the biological traces came from hegemony weapons, not Zephyrian research. She explained how her people were peaceful, how they had never made weapons of any kind. She begged the council to send investigators to see the truth, but fear was stronger than truth. The quarantine is necessary, the council decided. No ship may enter or leave the Zephyrian system until the contamination is eliminated. The blockade began the next day. Massive hegemony warships surrounded their star system like a wall of metal and death. Any ship that tried to leave was destroyed without warning. No supplies could come in. No messages could go out. At first, the Zephyrians thought it would be temporary. Surely someone would investigate. Surely the truth would come out. They had enough food and medicine to last for months. Their cities generated their own power from the ocean currents. But months passed, and no help came. Now their children were getting sick, not from any plague, but from lack of medicine. The trade ships that brought rare minerals for their technology were gone. Their medical equipment was breaking down. The coral that formed their cities was beginning to die without the nutrients that came from off-world. How many do we have left? Cathara asked, though she already knew the answer would be bad. The population has dropped to 47 million, Voltar said quietly. We lost another city yesterday. The power failed, and they could not evacuate in time. 47 million. Once there had been 8 billion Zephyrians swimming through the oceans of their world. Now families were dying every day, and there was nothing anyone could do to stop it. The worst part was the silence. In the early days of the quarantine, they received messages from other worlds. Some expressed sympathy. Others asked for proof that they were not dangerous. But as time passed, the galaxy forgot about them. The Zephyrians became a problem that was solved by being ignored. Cathara swam to the great window of the council chamber and looked up through the water toward the surface. Somewhere above, beyond the atmosphere, the hegemony ships waited in the darkness of space. They were patient. They did not need to attack. Time would do their killing for them. "Have we received any response to our emergency broadcasts?" she asked. "No, Ambassador. The blockade is jamming our signals. Some messages might get through, but..." Veltar did not finish the sentence. They both knew the truth. Even if their calls for help reached other worlds, no one would answer. The galaxy had made its choice. The Zephyrians were marked for death, and no one wanted to risk helping them. Cathara thought about her daughter, Silara, who had been born just before the quarantine began. The little one had never seen another species, never played in waters that were not slowly dying. She would grow up in a world that was fading away, assuming she lived long enough to grow up at all. "There is something else," Veltar said, his voice even quieter than before. "The outer cities report that their food supplies will run out within 2 months. The hydroponic farms are failing without replacement parts. 2 months. Perhaps less. Then the dying would begin in earnest." Cathara pressed her webbed hands against the window. Somewhere out there, beyond the blockade, ships from hundreds of worlds traveled freely through space. They traded goods and shared knowledge. They lived their lives without fear or hunger. But the Zephyrians were alone. They had been left to perish by a galaxy that was too afraid or too indifferent to seek the truth. Their crime was being in the wrong place when the hegemony needed someone to blame for their illegal experiments. "Send another message," she ordered. "Broadcast on all frequencies. Tell them who we really are. Tell them about our children. Tell them we are not monsters, just people who want to live." "Yes, yes, Ambassador," Veltar said. Though they both knew it would change nothing, as her aide swam away to send another hopeless message into the void. Cathara remained at the window, looking up toward the stars she could not see. The water around her was growing colder each day, and soon it would be too cold for life. The galaxy had abandoned them. But still, she hoped. Against all reason, against all evidence, she hoped that someone, somewhere, would remember that justice was more important than fear. Someone would come. Someone had to come, but time was running out, and hope was becoming harder to hold on to with each passing day. Captain Elena Vasquez was drinking her morning coffee when her communications officer changed everything. "Captain, we're picking up a strange signal," Lieutenant Torres called from his station on the bridge of the exploration ship Perseverance. "It's weak, but it's definitely artificial. Someone is calling for help." Elena set down her cup and walked over to the communications console. The Perseverance was 3 weeks into a routine survey mission in the Outer Rim territories, mapping star systems that humans had never visited before. Earth was still new to the galactic community, having made first contact only 2 years ago. Every mission was a chance to learn something new about their neighbors among the stars. "Can you clean up the signal?" Elena asked. Torres worked at his controls, and slowly a voice began to emerge from the static. It was unlike anything Elena had ever heard, musical, flowing, like someone singing underwater. "This is Ambassador Cathara of the Zephyrian Republic," the voice said, an accented but clear galactic standard. "Our people are dying. We are trapped in our system by a blockade. We are not diseased. We are not dangerous. Please, if anyone receives this message, we need help. Our children are starving. Our cities are failing. The galaxy has abandoned us, but we will not stop hoping that someone will hear our words and remember that we are living beings who deserve to survive." The message repeated over and over, growing weaker each time. "How long has this been broadcasting?" Elena asked. "Unknown, Captain. Could be weeks or months. The signal is very degraded." Elena stared at the communications console. She had never heard of the Zephyrians before, but the desperation in the ambassador's voice was clear in any language. Someone was trapped and calling for help. "Set course for Earth," she ordered. "Maximum speed. And keep recording that signal." The journey back to Earth took 5 days. During that time, Elena's crew worked to piece together more information about the mysterious distress call. Their computer databases contained almost nothing about the Zephyrians, which was strange. The galactic information networks usually had at least basic data about all member species. What they did find was troubling. 3 months ago, the Galactic Council had issued a health warning about a system called Aquatica Prime. The official reports spoke of a biological contamination that threatened to spread to other worlds. A quarantine had been established for the safety of all galactic citizens. But the voice in the distress signal told a different story. When the Perseverance reached Earth, Elena went straight to Admiral Sarah Chun, the head of Earth's Galactic Affairs Committee. Admiral Chun was a tough woman who had spent her career preparing humanity for the day they would meet other intelligent species. She listened to the recording without interruption, her face growing darker with each word. "Have you verified this information?" Admiral Chun asked. "We checked the galactic databases, Admiral. The official story is that the Zephyrians created some kind of biological weapon that got out of control. The hegemony is leading the quarantine effort." Admiral Chun was quiet for a long moment. She had dealt with the hegemony before. They were the most powerful military force in the galaxy, and they did not like questions about their methods. "I want to know more about this," she said finally. "Get Dr. Reed down here." Dr. Marcus Reed was Earth's leading expert on alien biology. He was a small, quiet man who preferred his laboratory to the conference rooms of galactic politics. But when Admiral Chun played the Zephyrian distress call, his eyes lit up with interest. "Fascinating," he said, pulling up data on his tablet. "I've read about the Zephyrians in the xenobiology journals. They're an aquatic species, highly intelligent, completely peaceful. They've never shown any interest in weapons research. Could they have created a biological weapon by accident?" Admiral Chun asked. Dr. Reed shook his head. "Extremely unlikely. Their entire culture is built around living in harmony with their ocean environment. Creating something that could harm biological life would go against everything they believe in. Then, why is the galaxy so afraid of them?" "That," Dr. Reed said, "is what we need to find out." Admiral Chun called an emergency meeting with Earth's full delegation to the Galactic Council. The humans were not yet full members of the Council, but they had observer status and the right to ask questions. The Council met in a massive space station orbiting the galactic capital. Representatives from dozens of species gathered in a great chamber filled with different atmospheric zones to accommodate their various needs. When Admiral Chun requested permission to speak about the Zephyrian situation, the chamber fell silent. Chancellor Vextar of the hegemony spoke first. He was a tall mechanical being encased in black armor, his voice coming through speakers that made it sound cold and emotionless. "The humans are new to galactic politics," he said. "They do not understand the dangers we face. The Zephyrian contamination has been contained, and it will remain contained. This is not humanity's concern. We've received distress calls from their system," Admiral Chun said calmly. "They claim they're innocent." "Of course they claim innocence," Vextar replied. "All criminals claim innocence. The evidence against them is overwhelming. Their biological weapons research has created a plague that could destroy entire worlds. May we see this evidence?" The chamber erupted in clicking, buzzing, and humming as the various species discussed among themselves. Finally, a representative of the crystal-like Vorthery spoke. "The evidence is classified for security reasons," she said, her voice like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. Revealing the details could help other species develop similar weapons. Admiral Chun looked around the chamber. The insectoid klaxons were avoiding her gaze. The energy-being luminari flickered nervously. Even the usually friendly trader species seemed uncomfortable. So we're supposed to accept that an entire species should be quarantined to death based on evidence we're not allowed to see. You are supposed, Chancellor Vextar said, his voice growing colder, to trust the judgment of species that have been maintaining galactic peace for thousands of years. Humanity has been in space for less than a century. You lack the experience to understand these complex matters. The meaning was clear. Question the quarantine, and humanity would be excluded from the galactic community before they were truly part of it. The council session ended with no changes. The quarantine would continue. The Zephyrians would remain trapped in their dying system. But as Admiral Chun left the station, she was already making plans. "Get me Captain Vasquez," she ordered her aide, "and prepare a full mission briefing for the Science Council. We're going to find out what's really happening in the Zephyrian system." "Admiral," her aide said carefully, "the hegemony made it very clear that interference would have consequences for Earth's membership application." Admiral Chun stopped walking and turned to face her aide. "Sometimes," she said, "doing what's right is more important than doing what's safe. If the galaxy is willing to let an entire species die based on secret evidence and hidden motives, then maybe it's a community we don't want to be part of." 3 days later, Captain Vasquez received new orders. Take a small fleet to the Zephyrian system. Investigate the quarantine. Find the truth. The orders were unofficial, of course. If things went wrong, Earth would deny knowledge of the mission. But Elena didn't care about the politics. Somewhere in space, people were dying while calling for help. And humanity had never been good at ignoring cries for help, even when answering them was dangerous. The Perseverance and 2 other ships left Earth's orbit that night, heading toward a quarantine system and whatever secrets the galaxy was trying to hide there. For the first time in months, the Zephyrians were about to learn they were not alone. The hegemony blockade was more massive than Captain Elena Vasquez had expected. Through the view screen of the Perseverance, she could see dozens of warships arranged in a perfect sphere around the Zephyrian star system. Each ship was 3 times larger than any vessel in the human fleet. Their dark hulls bristled with weapons designed to destroy anything that came too close. "Impressive," said Commander James Park from the bridge of the Endeavour, speaking over the communication link. "Looks like they're serious about keeping visitors away." "Too serious," Elena replied. She had seen military blockades before, but this was different. This was designed to make sure nothing got in or out ever. It was the kind of blockade you built when you wanted something to die quietly. The 3rd ship in their small fleet was the research vessel Discovery, commanded by Dr. Reed himself. The scientist had insisted on coming along, bringing equipment designed to detect biological threats. If there really was a plague in the Zephyrian system, they needed to know about it before they made contact. "Scanning the blockade now," reported Lieutenant Torres. "I count 47 ships, all heavily armed. They're running regular patrols, but there are gaps in their coverage." Elena studied the patrol patterns on her screen. The hegemony commanders were confident, maybe too confident. They had set up their blockade, assuming that no one would be foolish enough to challenge them directly. The patrol routes were predictable, designed more for show than for actual defense. "They're not expecting anyone to try to get through," she said. "They think the galaxy is too afraid to interfere." "Maybe the galaxy is right to be afraid," Commander Park said. "Those are some big guns they're pointing at us." "Then it's a good thing we're not planning to fight them head-on," Elena replied with a smile. The human plan was simple in concept but dangerous in execution. While the massive hegemony ships patrolled in their predictable patterns, the smaller human vessels would slip through the gaps using stealth technology and electronic countermeasures. It was the kind of crazy plan that only worked if your opponents thought you were too sensible to try it. "Beginning approach," Elena announced. "Remember, we're just space debris until we reach the inner system." The 3 human ships powered down their main engines and began drifting toward the blockade. Their stealth fields made them nearly invisible to most sensors, and their small size helped them hide among the natural asteroids and comets that drifted between star systems for 6 tense hours. They played a deadly game of hide and seek with the hegemony patrols. Twice they had to change course when patrol ships came too close. Once they had to hide behind a small asteroid while a massive hegemony dreadnought passed less than 1,000 kilometers away. But finally, they were through. "We're inside the perimeter," Elena announced, setting course for Aquatica Prime. What they found when they reached the Zephyrian homeworld broke their hearts. Aquatica Prime was an ocean world, covered entirely by deep blue water. From space, it should have been beautiful, dotted with glowing cities beneath the waves. But many of those cities were dark now, their lights gone out forever. The few remaining bright spots looked weak and scattered, like dying embers in a cold fireplace. "My God," Dr. Reed whispered over the communication channel. "How many people lived here?" "Our intelligence report said 8 billion, Elena replied quietly. "I'm detecting maybe 50 million life signs," Taurus reported. "And the number is dropping." Elena felt anger building in her chest. Whatever had happened here, it was not the result of some accidental plague. This was systematic destruction, slow and deliberate. "We're receiving a transmission," Torres announced. The main screen flickered. And suddenly, they were looking at an alien face unlike anything they had ever seen. It was vaguely humanoid, but clearly adapted for life underwater. Large black eyes, skin that seemed to shift color in the light, and gill slits along the neck. The being looked exhausted, but when she saw the human ships, her eyes widened with something that might have been hope. "I am Ambassador Cathar of the Zephyrian Republic," the being said, in accented but clear galactic standard. Are you real? Or have we finally started to dream of rescue?" "We're real, Ambassador," Elena replied. "I'm Captain Elena Vasquez of the Earthship Perseverance. We received your distress calls." Cathara's expression went through several changes: disbelief, hope, joy, and then caution. "Earth?" she said. "I do not know this world." "Are you part of the Galactic Council?" "Not exactly. We're new to the neighborhood. But we heard you asking for help, and we don't ignore people in trouble. You broke through the blockade to reach us?" Cathar's voice was filled with wonder. "But why? You do not know us. We cannot offer you anything in return." Elena felt a lump in her throat. The idea that someone would only help if they got something back was so foreign to her that she almost didn't know how to respond. Because it was the right thing to do, she said finally. Over the next several hours, Dr. Reed and his team worked with Zephyrian scientists to investigate the supposed plague. They took water samples, studied the dead areas of the ocean, and analyzed every bit of data they could find. What they discovered made Elena's anger turn into cold fury. "There is no plague," Dr. Reed announced during their emergency conference. "There never was a plague. What we're seeing are the after effects of biological weapons testing. Someone dumped experimental toxins into the outer ocean, then blamed the Zephyrians when the evidence was discovered." "The hegemony," Cathara said, her voice filled with bitter understanding. "They came here 6 months ago, saying they wanted to study our world. They conducted experiments in the deep ocean trenches. When their weapons leaked and killed marine life, they needed someone to blame. So they accused you of creating the weapons they were testing," Elena said. "And the galaxy believed them. Because we are weak and they are strong. Elena looked at the data on her screen. Millions of Zephyrians had already died, not from any disease, but from hunger and desperation as their civilization slowly collapsed. The hegemony had committed genocide and convinced the galaxy it was necessary for public safety. "We need to get this information back to Earth," Commander Park said. "This is evidence of war crimes. By the time that evidence works its way through galactic bureaucracy, there won't be any Zevrians left to save," Elena replied. She was quiet for a moment, thinking. Then she made a decision that would change everything. "How many people can your remaining cities support?" she asked Cathara. "With proper medical supplies and food?" "Perhaps 100 million. But we have no way to get those supplies." "Yes, you do," Elena said. "You have us." "Captain," Dr. Reed said carefully, "we don't have the authority to start a relief mission. And the hegemony will not allow supply ships through the blockade." Elena smiled, but it was not a pleasant expression. "Then we'll have to make them allow it." "Torres, send a message to Admiral Chun. Tell her we found evidence of hegemony, war crimes, and request immediate humanitarian assistance. Then broadcast our findings on all galactic frequencies." "Captain," Commander Park warned, "that's going to start a war." "Good," Elena replied. "It's about time someone started fighting for these people instead of just abandoning them to die." As the human ships began broadcasting their evidence to the galaxy, Elena looked at Cathara's image on the screen. The Zephyrian ambassador was staring at her with an expression of amazement. "You would risk your own people for us?" Cathara asked. "We're all people," Elena said simply. "And people shouldn't have to face extinction alone." For the first time in months, there was hope in Cathara's large black eyes. Somewhere in space, help was coming. The question now was whether it would arrive in time, and whether humanity was strong enough to stand against the forces that wanted the Zephyrians dead. But Elena had made her choice. The Zephyrians would not die while humans drew breath to help them. The first human supply ship arrived 3 days later. "Captain," Elena Vasquez watched from the bridge of the Perseverance as the cargo vessel Mercy dropped out of, faster than light travel, and immediately began broadcasting on all frequencies. The message was simple. They carried medical supplies and food for the Zephyrians, and they would not be turned away. The hegemony response was swift and brutal. "Human vessel, you will reverse course immediately," came the mechanical voice of a hegemony commander. "This system is under quarantine. Any attempt to land supplies will result in your destruction." Captain Maria Santos of the Mercy answered with calm determination. "Negative, Hegemony Command. We carry humanitarian aid for dying people. We will not be turned away by threats." "You have been warned," the Hegemony Commander replied. 3 massive warships moved to intercept the supply vessel, their weapons powered up, ready to turn the Mercy into space debris. But they had not counted on human stubbornness. The Mercy did not turn away. Instead, she accelerated directly toward the planet, broadcasting images of starving Zephyrian children to the entire galaxy. Her captain was betting that the hegemony would not want to be seen destroying a humanitarian mission in front of the whole galactic community. She was wrong. The hegemony ships opened fire without hesitation. The Mercy exploded in a ball of light that could be seen from the planet's surface. Captain Santos and her crew of 30 volunteers died instantly, along with enough medical supplies to save thousands of Zephyrian lives. Elena felt something cold settle in her stomach as she watched the debris scatter through space. These were not soldiers who had died, but doctors and aid workers who had volunteered to help strangers they had never met. "Those monsters," Dr. Reed whispered from his station. "They killed aid workers." "Send a message to Admiral Chun," Elena ordered, her voice deadly calm. "Tell her the hegemony has fired on humanitarian vessels. Tell her it's time to stop playing by their rules." Within hours, more ships began arriving. Not just human vessels, but ships from across Earth's growing network of colonies and allies. Each one carried supplies for the Zephyrians. Each one was prepared to face the hegemony blockade. But this time, they came protected. Admiral Sarah Chun arrived aboard the battleship Constitution, leading Earth's entire space fleet. It was not a large force by galactic standards, only 15 ships compared to the hegemony's 47. But the human ships were crewed by people who had grown up fighting in the harsh environment of space. And they were angry. "This is Admiral Chun of the Earth Defense Force," came the announcement across all channels. "The Zephyrians are now under human protection. Any vessel that interferes with our humanitarian mission will be treated as hostile." Chancellor Vexstar himself responded from his flagship, the Master Dreadnought Dominion. "Admiral Chun, you are making a grave mistake. Your species has no authority in this matter. Withdraw immediately, or Earth will never be welcome in the galactic community." "The galactic community that watches innocent people die?" Admiral Chun replied. "The one that believes secret evidence and refuses to investigate crimes? Maybe that's not a community we want to be part of." Elena smiled as she listened to the exchange. Admiral Chun was done with diplomatic niceties. The time for talking had ended when the Mercy was destroyed. "You have 10 seconds to move your ships out of our way," Admiral Chun continued. "After that, we will move them for you." "You would attack the hegemony fleet with 15 ships?" Vexstar asked, and there was genuine surprise in his mechanical voice. "You cannot hope to win." "Probably not," Admiral Chun admitted. "But we'll make you pay such a price that every species in the galaxy will remember what happens when you murder aid workers." What followed was like nothing the galaxy had ever seen. Human ships did not fight like the massive, slow-moving capital ships that usually dominated space warfare. They moved like fighters, darting between the larger hegemony vessels and striking at weak points with surgical precision. Human pilots who had learned to navigate asteroid fields and solar storms proved to be nearly impossible. To hit with weapons designed for ship-to-ship combat, the Endeavour launched a spread of missiles at a hegemony cruiser, then used its superior maneuverability to duck behind the wreckage before return fire could reach it. The Discovery used its scientific sensors to jam hegemony targeting systems, causing their weapons to fire at empty space, while human ships struck from unexpected angles. But the most effective weapon in the human arsenal was not technological. It was moral. Every battle was broadcast across the galaxy. Every time a hegemony ship destroyed a human vessel carrying medical supplies, the images were seen on millions of worlds. Every time human pilots died protecting Zephyrian children, their sacrifice was recorded for history. And slowly, the galaxy began to respond. The first to break ranks were the Vorthari. These crystal beings had always prized truth and justice above political convenience. When their representatives saw clear evidence of hegemony war crimes and human sacrifice, they could no longer remain neutral. The Vorthari Collective offers technological assistance to the human relief effort, came the announcement from their homeworld. "We cannot stand by while innocent beings die for political convenience." Their ships began sharing advanced shield technology with the human fleet, helping to protect the supply vessels that continued to arrive despite the danger. Next came the younger generation of Klaxons. While their government officially supported the quarantine, individual captains began to accidentally interfere with hegemony communications and supply lines. Klaxon officers resigned their commissions rather than fire on human aid ships. Even some of the energy being Luminari began to help, using their natural abilities to disrupt hegemony sensors and communications. But the battle was far from over. Chancellor Vexstar, seeing his political position crumbling as the galaxy turned against him, made a desperate decision. If he could not maintain the quarantine through fear, he would end it through genocide. "Prepare the planet killer," he ordered his fleet. "We will sterilize Aquatica Prime completely. Tell the galaxy that the contamination became too dangerous to contain." Elena felt her blood turn to ice as she intercepted the hegemony communications. A planet killer was exactly what it sounded like, a weapon designed to destroy entire worlds. If Vextar used it, every Zephyrian would die in seconds. "Admiral Chun," she broadcast urgently, "the hegemony is preparing to destroy the planet. All ships. Emergency maneuvers," Admiral Chun ordered. "Protect Aquatica Prime at all costs." What followed was the most desperate battle in human history. 15 human ships threw themselves against a massive hegemony fleet, not to win, but simply to buy time. They fought like cornered animals, using every trick and tactic they had ever learned. The Perseverance rammed a hegemony destroyer, Captain Elena Vasquez sacrificing her ship to prevent it from supporting the planet killer. Commander Park drove the Endeavour directly into the Dominion's weapon batteries, destroying himself but damaging the flagship's ability to coordinate the attack. One by one, the human ships died. But they took hegemony vessels with them, and more importantly, they gave the galaxy time to act. Finally, as the planet killer weapon charged for its deadly shot, ships from across the galaxy arrived in the Zephyrin system. Vorthary crystal ships, Klaxon swarm fighters, even some Luminary energy beings who had taken physical form to join the battle. But it was too late. The planet killer was ready to fire. Then Ambassador Catharus' voice cut across all communication channels, speaking not to the hegemony or the human fleet, but to the galaxy itself. "We are the Zephyrians," she said, her musical voice carrying across space to every listening world. "We have lived in peace for 10,000 years. We have never raised weapons against any being. We ask only for the right to exist, to raise our children, to swim in the oceans our ancestors loved. If the galaxy chooses to let us die, we will die with dignity. But we will never stop believing that somewhere among the stars, there are people who remember that all life is precious." The weapon powered down not because of human sacrifice or alien intervention, but because across the galaxy, on 1,000 different worlds, people were watching. They were watching the hegemony prepared to commit genocide against a peaceful species whose only crime was being in the wrong place when war crimes needed to be covered up, and they were watching humans die to prevent it. The political cost of firing that weapon had become too high. Even for the hegemony Chancellor, Vextar's voice came across the communications one last time, filled with cold fury. "This is not over, humans. You have made an enemy of the most powerful force in the galaxy." "Good," Admiral Chun replied, though only 3 human ships remained operational. "We'd rather be your enemy than your accomplice." The siege was broken. Supply ships began landing on Aquatica Prime, carrying medicine and food to the dying cities. Human engineers worked alongside Zephyrian scientists to restore power to the darkened settlements, but the cost had been terrible. 12 ships and over 400 human lives had been lost to save a species they had never met before. As Elena floated in the medical bay of the Constitution, recovering from injuries sustained when her ship was destroyed, she watched through the viewport as Zephyrian children swam through waters that were growing brighter each day. 6 months after the siege ended, the Galactic Council met in emergency session. This time, the Great Chamber was filled with a different energy. Where once there had been quiet compliance with hegemony demands, now there was heated debate and open challenge. Admiral Sarah Chun sat in the Human Observer section, no longer asking for permission to speak. The events at Aquatica Prime had changed humanity's status in ways that no political process could have achieved. They were no longer newcomers begging for acceptance. They were the species that had stood against genocide when no one else would. Chancellor Vextar stood at the center of the chamber, his black armor seeming less impressive than before. Around him, the evidence of his crimes was displayed for all to see. Recordings of hegemony biological weapons testing. Communications ordering the destruction of humanitarian vessels. Orders to prepare planet-killer weapons against civilian targets. "The evidence is clear," announced the Vorthery representative, her crystal form glowing with righteous anger. The hegemony created the biological contamination they blamed on the Zephyrians. They then used this false flag to justify genocide. "This is a fabrication," Vextar declared, but his mechanical voice lacked its usual confidence. "Human propaganda designed to destabilize galactic order." "The humans," buzzed a young Klaxon officer who had resigned her commission rather than fire on aid ships, "risked everything to save innocent people. They lost 400 lives to prevent the hegemony from committing genocide. If this is propaganda, it is propaganda written in blood." The chamber erupted in discussion. Species that had remained silent for centuries were now speaking openly about hegemony abuses. Old grievances that had been suppressed by fear were brought into the light. The careful balance of power that had kept the galaxy peaceful was crumbling. Ambassador Cathara spoke for the Zephyrians, her voice carrying the weight of 8 billion lost lives and the hope of 50 million survivors. "We do not ask for revenge," she said. "We ask for truth. We ask for justice. We ask that no other species be forced to face extinction alone while the galaxy watches in silence." The debate continued for hours, but the outcome was never really in doubt. The evidence was too clear, and the moral authority of the human intervention was too strong. When the vote was called, it was overwhelming. Chancellor Vextar and the hegemony leadership were stripped of their positions and charged with crimes against galactic peace. The quarantine of Aquatica Prime was officially lifted. Most importantly, the Council established new laws requiring investigation of all quarantine orders and making the deliberate destruction of humanitarian missions a crime against all sentient life. But the most significant change was yet to come. "The Council recognizes," announced the Luminary representative, her energy form flickering with emotion, "that our previous standards for membership have been inadequate. We have focused on technology and political stability while ignoring moral courage. Earth is hereby granted full Council membership with all rights and privileges, in recognition of their demonstration that wisdom and compassion are more important than age or power." The vote was unanimous. Even the remaining hegemony representatives voted in favor, perhaps hoping that association with humanity might help rebuild their shattered reputation. Admiral Chun stood to address the Council for the first time as a full member. "We accept this membership with honor," she said. "But we want to be clear about what kind of galactic community we're joining. If this council exists only to maintain the power of the strong over the weak, then we're not interested. If it exists to ensure that all sentient beings can live in peace and dignity, then we're proud to be part of it." "What do you propose?" asked the Vorthery representative. "The Mutual Defense and Assistance Pact," Admiral Chun replied. "Any species threatened with extinction or genocide will have the automatic support of all Council members. No more secret evidence. No more abandoned peoples. No more letting the innocent die while we debate politics." The proposal sparked the most intense debate in Council history. Some species worried about being drawn into conflicts that were not their concern. Others feared the cost of standing up to powerful aggressors. But when the vote was called, it passed by a wide margin. The galaxy had learned that sometimes doing what was right was more important than doing what was safe. 3 years later, Captain Elena Vasquez stood on the observation deck of the joint Human-Zephyrian research station that orbited Aquatica Prime. Through the transparent aluminum windows, she could see the blue-green planet below. its oceans once again bright with the lights of thriving cities. "The population has reached 200 million, Ambassador Cathar reported, swimming up to join Elena at the window. The Zephyrian had insisted that the station include aquatic sections where her people could be comfortable. "Our birth rates have returned to normal levels, and we've established new colonies on 3 nearby worlds." Elena smiled. The recovery had been faster than anyone expected. With access to galactic trade and technology restored, Zephyrian civilization had not just survived but flourished. Their unique insights into biological systems had made them valuable research partners for dozens of species. "And the new planetary defense grid?" Elena asked. "Completed last month," Cathar replied, "though we hope never to need it." The defense grid was another change brought about by the Aquatica Prime incident. No species would ever again be left defenseless against blockade or siege. The Council had mandated that all member worlds have the means to protect themselves and call for help if threatened. "Captain," Cathar said quietly, "I wanted to thank you again. Not just for what you did during the siege, but for changing how the galaxy thinks about itself." Elena shook her head. "We didn't change the galaxy. We just reminded it what it was supposed to be. Perhaps. But before humanity arrived, the galaxy had forgotten that lesson. We had all become so focused on maintaining stability that we forgot why stability mattered in the first place." A soft chime indicated an incoming message. Elena activated the communication panel, and Admiral Chun's face appeared on the screen. "Captain Vasquez, we have a situation. The Andromedans in the Kepler system are reporting that their star is showing signs of instability. They've requested immediate evacuation assistance." Elena felt the familiar surge of purpose. The Andromedans were a young species, barely a century into spaceflight. Their technology was not advanced enough to evacuate their homeworld quickly. In the old galaxy, they would have been left to face extinction alone while the Council debated whether it was cost-effective to help them. But this was not the old galaxy. "Understood, Admiral. How many ships are responding?" 47 vessels from 12 different species. The Vorthari are providing transport ships. The Klaxons are sending engineering teams to help stabilize the star, and the Luminari are coordinating long-range communications. Everyone wants to help. Elena smiled. This was what the galaxy was supposed to be, not a collection of species competing for resources, but a community of people helping each other survive and thrive among the stars. "We'll be there in 6 hours," she said, that as the research station's engines powered up for the journey to Kepler system. Elena looked back at Aquatica Prime one last time. The blue world was peaceful now, its people free to swim through oceans that would never again be cut off from the wider galaxy. The station jumped to faster than light speed, carrying its mixed crew of humans and Zephyrians toward another world in need. Behind them, Aquatica Prime continued its ancient rotation, proof that sometimes the smallest actions could change the entire universe. 47 ships responding to a cry for help. 12 species working together without thought of reward or recognition. A galaxy that had learned to value compassion over comfort, justice over convenience. It had taken the near extinction of one peaceful species and the sacrifice of 400 human lives to teach these lessons. But they had been learned well. In the end, the galaxy had not abandoned the Zephyrians to die alone. It had simply needed to remember what it meant to be truly civilized. And humanity, the newest voice in the galactic community, had been the one to remind them that no one should face extinction alone while others had the power to help. The research station disappeared into the brightness between stars, carrying hope to another world, another species, another chance to prove that the galaxy had finally learned to be worthy of the civilizations it contained. In the depths of Aquatica Prime's oceans, Zephyrian children played in the coral cities their parents had rebuilt. never knowing how close they had come to never existing at all. They would grow up in a galaxy where their right to live was protected not by law or treaty, but by the simple recognition that all life was precious, and that good people would always stand up for those who could not stand up for themselves. And somewhere in space, traveling toward the next crisis, the next opportunity to choose between what was easy and what was right, humanity continued to carry the torch they had lit at Aquatica Prime, the light that reminded the galaxy what it truly meant to be civilized beings among the stars.